What if I get audited? Or what if I do my taxes but I do them wrong? Is a CPA worth the extra money that I'll have to pay? And how do I find a good CPA even if I do want to use it? All of these are legit concerns, and if you've clicked this video, you're probably trying to decide if you should use a CPA or if you should use TurboTax or some other tax preparing software. I personally am a CPA. That is how I make my living. So I am going to break down when I think you should use a tax software versus when you should hire a CPA. Spoiler alert, most people should use TurboTax. I am on a mission to make the world better at personal finance, and to do so, I need you to help me spread the word. So if you have not yet, please subscribe, share this with a friend. I want to hit 100,000 subscribers by July 2021. So every situation is a little bit different. Now, if you find yourself in a very simple tax return, like if you just have a couple W-2s and you're going to take the standard deduction, 100% use TurboTax because it's going to save you a lot of money. You can actually file for free instead of paying at least a couple $100s to hire a CPA and have them do your taxes for you. Now, a standard deduction just means that they're going to reduce your income. And for an individual, that is $12,400, and you can double that for a married filing jointly. But if you are going to use the standard deduction, man, save your money and go to TurboTax. If you are going to itemize, that means you have mortgage interest, charitable donations, medical expenses, and state income taxes, and a few other things that add up to more than that standard deduction. You still may be able to save money just by going to TurboTax, and TurboTax asks you all of those questions for you. So your CPA is going to ask you, or TurboTax is going to ask you. So even if you itemize, you could still go to TurboTax. They will charge you because you're going to itemize, but it's going to be less than a CPA. And so I would say, man, if you just have a simple return, even if you itemize, TurboTax is the way to go on that one because you can just save a ton of money and pretty much get the exact same result. All right, now let's say, what if your taxes are a little more complicated? Like what if you have a W-2, maybe a side hustle that you do, so it's like a small business, and say you have, a 401k at the job that you have or a health savings account. I mean, all of that just adds tax forms, and sometimes people feel a little overwhelmed with all of that. But TurboTax is really good at asking questions, the same questions that your CPA is going to ask, and they'll actually import a lot of those forms for you. Now, at this point, this is where you've just kind of got to decide, is it worth my time to go and do it on TurboTax? Because it will take time. You have to enter it in. You've got to double check everything. They can import it, but you got to double check things. So you got to decide, is the opportunity cost worth it? Because you will save money by going to TurboTax rather than hiring a CPA. But if your time is more valuable than that, if you say, oh man, it's going to I can save myself $200 by spending 4 hours on here, or I could use those 4 hours to go make $300. Well, yeah, you got to weigh the cost benefit and then decide whether or not you're going to go to a CPA. But I would just say most people can handle TurboTax and be able to answer all of those questions when you have like a moderate to simple tax return. And so, hard and fast rule, if you're simple, use TurboTax. If you're moderate, make a decision. Now, let's break down when I think you should automatically just go and hire a CPA, because I think it's going to be worth the money saved and the time and money that you're going to make up by hiring a CPA. All right, so now the hard and fast rule, if you are going to use a CPA, I really think a CPA is worth it when you have complicated business. Like if you're running a full-time business, maybe you're depreciating multiple asset types, you have very complicated taxes where you're going to be taking some credits or anything like that. If you have something, especially like a big full-time business, hire a CPA because they can do the planning for you. They can think of things that TurboTax just wouldn't ask you because it's far more advanced. So that is when a CPA is definitely worth it. TurboTax is really good about asking questions about the current year and answering those things and getting your tax prepared and filed. That's awesome, especially when you have a simple return. But when you have more complicated business, then that's when a CPA comes into play because they can do tax planning with you. So they can ask you questions about where you're going to go with your business, things that you want to do, and then they can sculpt like when you're going to do those expenses to best give you the highest return on your taxes so that you can use that money for your business. So that's where I think a CPA is worth it, through the tax planning So if you have a business and you want to do different things, you want to grow, etc., buy things, buy a new thing in machinery or whatever, that is where a CPA is worth it, because they can help you tax plan and get the biggest deductions that you possibly can. Hopefully this video was able to help you decide whether or not you're going to use TurboTax or a CPA. I know it's a little bit of a complicated decision, but for most people, I really don't think it should be. If you're simple, use TurboTax. If you're complicated, use a CPA. If you're somewhere in the middle, decide on your own, because you get to decide what your time is worth. Are you thinking about selling a house and you're wondering about the tax implications of that? Check out this video right up here. It's going to break down how you can avoid capital gains tax when you sell your house.